Exploring the world of Dark Souls is much like running off to play in the woods when you were a child. The sky's the limit, and you can only be stopped by your imagination. This is exactly how it was for Hidetaka Miyazaki.
When Miyazaki began creating this magnificent world, he looked back in his life from when he was a youth. At a young age, Miyazaki read many fantasy books. Like many of us, he wasn't the best of readers back then, but this never stopped him. In fact, it helped him more than he realized at the time. Because of him sometimes not being able to read certain words or even sentences, it left much of the story untold. The young Miyazaki decided this is where he would step in. He would often make up his own versions of the stories he would read, filling in the gaps that were left behind. If you couldn't figure it out by now, this is exactly how he created the worlds his games would take place in. There are many gaps in the history and the lore in the world of the Dark Souls series where it almost seems to mirror our own. But today we're here to talk about Dark Souls, more specifically Dark Souls 3.
Where this game differs from the others in the series is how the world is changing before our very eyes. In the previous installments, all the events that led up to that very moment had already happened, allowing you to explore their ruined kingdoms. Dark Souls 3 goes with a different approach. Instead of exploring out into the world around you, the world is quite literally coming to you. Or to be more specific, the lands are converging. You brave through treacherous lands which shouldn't even be there. To name one, Catacombs of Carthus. What the game doesn't directly tell you is that Carthus was once an impressive and powerful kingdom of the desert. Yet, we find its catacombs right under the poisonous swamp of Faerun, the home of the Abyss Watchers. Due to the Abyss Watchers' previous siege on Carthus, these two lands are now linked to one another. So when the fire begins to fade once again, these two lands become as one. But let's take a step back and go to the beginning of the game, to the High Wall of Lothric. Lothric is one of the more important locations in the game. It signifies your progression throughout your journey. While exploring the High Wall, everything around you is hinting at a worn-torn land. Wyvern corpses, abyss-possessed knights, and mad hollows stain the Great Kingdom's first line of defense. As you traverse, you are rewarded with shortcuts and powerful adversaries to face you in bloody combat. When you finally return later in your venture, you gain access to Lothric Castle. You feel an alien yet familiar experience as you trek your way through the dilapidated castle. The sky stained with a burning orange, more enemies beginning to be dominated by the abyss, and long dead knights scattered throughout, all while the upper limits of the barracks are guarded by two wyverns. Everything around you emits an evil aura of war and suffering. Progression can be shown with more than just environmental changes. While you are scavenging for puny Titanite shards during your time on the High Wall, you are now hunting Titanite chunks and the legendary Titanite slab. Lothric is not only home to a grand castle, but also the Grand Archives, home to all of Lothric's greatest sorceries. Just beyond the High Wall is a settlement of the Undead. The Undead Settlement is an often overlooked area for being generally uninteresting. It's a rat-infested and hollow-plagued land. But if you look beneath the surface, there's more than meets the eye. Everything here is filled with the stench of death, rotting corpses being burned at the stake by the evangelist and their followers. Everywhere is covered by contorted buildings and soil. Shattered and torn down, this once lively settlement where the undead once congregated is now home to those who want nothing more than what their primal desires now wish for: souls. There are two places in particular that I would like to focus on. First is up the Archer's Tower. We can meet two interesting NPCs here: the Giant Archer and Sigurd of Katarina, but let's focus on the latter. Sigurd is one of the more story-driven characters you'll meet throughout the game. You both face a fiery demon locked away in the crevices of the malformed earth, drinking in victory as you bested your foe. Exploring further rewards you with two rings, the Chloranthy Ring and the Flynn's Ring. The second place of interest is beneath. Once you give the Shrine Handmaid the Mortician's Ashes, you can acquire the Grave Key, which opens the door to the Undead Settlement sewers. Here, you can find the Shrine of Velka on your right and another path to your left. Following this path grants you souls and embers, as well as leading to another NPC, Irina of Karim. Irina is a blind cleric who failed on her journey to become a firekeeper. Once freed from her confinement, she becomes a merchant in Firelink Shrine, selling you miracles. As opposed to the golden, war-torn kingdom of Lothric, there lies a frozen city as you emerge from the dark and damp catacombs of Karthus. Here you will find the majestic, frozen city of Irithyll. From the outside, it radiates an aura of magic and wonder, but as you cross over that bridge, you are chased by a creature made of fur and bones. This is when you begin to uncover a dark secret. All throughout the city, you will encounter the Pontiff Knights, freakishly tall and lanky warriors who command the dark arts, weaving it into their combat. Standing beside these warriors are mangly mutts, but something isn't quite right about them. These dogs' faces are actually human skulls. This is the first bit of evidence towards Irithyll's darkest secret: human experimentation. As you make your way through this unnerving environment, you find yourself in a moat. As you make your way forward, the creature from the bridge begins to chase you once more. You run to a distant opening in the wall for safety. Once you are safe, you travel down a tunnel, dodging enemies left and right, as if they were trying to stop you from entering this place. You eventually find yourself in the city's dungeons. You are met with tyrannical jailers whose very stare can steal your life force, maggot-infested hollows, and strangest of all, failed dragons. They let out hollowed cries of pain, using their torn-out spine as a way to defend themselves from any threats. These long-necked abominations were created by the Order of Pontiff Sullivan, perhaps trying to achieve the godlike status of the ancient dragons. After all, the only known way to reach Archdragon Peak is located in this very dungeon. Traveling back up towards the main streets, forcing your way past Pontiff Sullivan, you are met with only one option: proceed forward and travel skyward. Making your way past the dead giants, fire-blasting deacons, and silver knights, you make your way to an elevator. You slowly creep further up until the elevator suddenly stops and you are greeted with a familiar sight: Anor Londo. Silver knights guard this cathedral's long-forsaken gates, the grand illusion held by the Dark Sun Gwendolyn no more. The once lively giant blacksmith is no longer alive. There is nothing left in this once holy land except for death. Because just beyond that fog wall lies the Lord of Cinder, Aldrich the Devourer.
If you stayed around to the end, leave a comment telling us what we should cover next or anything we missed. We appreciate any feedback, and as always, we'll see you next time.